Israel says it will allow more aid to flow into Gaza as condemnation grows. The Israel Defense Forces has begun making controversial airdrops into Gaza, and the military says it will implement humanitarian pauses in parts of the enclave on Sunday, as well as establishing corridors for United Nations convoys to make aid deliveries. Israel's announcements Saturday came as global outrage over Gazans starving to death in the besieged Palestinian enclave reached a boiling point. A 5-month-old Palestinian baby suffering from malnutrition died in her mother's arms on Friday, becoming one of the enclave's latest hunger victims. Doctors are out of room inside hospitals as they try to treat starving patients. 6 people were killed and more than 160 injured while waiting for aid in northern Gaza, to separate incidents on Friday night and Saturday morning, according to medics. The IDF said troops fired warning shots near aid trucks, but that it was not aware of the reported casualties. The U.S. and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been criticized for not making aid sites safer since being positioned to replace the services of a UN agency. Israel's aid announcements, pauses in fighting. A humanitarian pause for parts of Gaza will begin Sunday local time, the IDF told Jason Miller, without specifying the intended length of the pause. The IDF said the pauses will take effect in designated densely populated areas, even as fighting would continue elsewhere. Aid corridors. Israel will also open humanitarian corridors in Gaza on Sunday, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. said. The IDF said, in an earlier statement, that it was prepared to establish the corridors for UN convoys. Airdrops begin. Meanwhile, Israel began dropping humanitarian aid into Gaza on Saturday. The UK and other governments are also rushing to get aid onto planes to Gaza. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's office said, after Israel said Friday that it would allow foreign nations to conduct airdrops too. Why the aid drops are controversial. The practice of dropping aid into the enclave has been dismissed by humanitarian groups as expensive, inefficient, and dangerous for those on the ground. The head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees called the drops a distraction Saturday, saying it will do little to alleviate suffering in the enclave while Israel maintains its blockade. Humanitarian pause for parts of Gaza will begin Sunday, local time, Israeli military says. A humanitarian pause in fighting for parts of Gaza will begin Sunday local time, the Israel Defense Forces told Jason Miller, without specifying the intended length of the pause. The IDF said the pauses will take effect in designated densely populated areas even as fighting would continue elsewhere. The IDF emphasizes that combat operations have not ceased. We will continue to operate in the Gaza Strip to return all hostages and to defeat the Hamas terrorist organization, both above and below ground, it said. Some context. The announcement Saturday of humanitarian pauses, the establishment of corridors for United Nations aid deliveries and controversial airdrops come on the heels of growing international condemnation over the dire conditions on the ground in Gaza due to Israel's siege on the Palestinian enclave. At least 127 people in the enclave have died of starvation or malnutrition since the conflict began in October 2023, according to Gaza's health ministry. That figure includes a 5-month-old baby who died in her mother's arms Friday. In Gaza hospitals, doctors are fainting from hunger while trying to save starving patients. Israel will open humanitarian corridors in Gaza on Sunday, ambassador says. The Israel Defense Forces will open additional humanitarian corridors in Gaza on Sunday, Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Yechiel Leiter said in a statement. Beginning tomorrow, Sunday, July 27th, the IDF will unilaterally open additional humanitarian corridors for the purpose of expanding humanitarian aid distribution to the non-combatant population of Gaza, Leiter said. The ambassador's remarks follow a statement from the Israeli military announcing that it planned to open the corridors to allow United Nations convoys to make aid deliveries. It also said it was prepared to implement humanitarian pauses to fighting in parts of the enclave. Israel says aid drops have begun in Gaza. The Israeli military has begun dropping humanitarian aid into Gaza, the Israel Defense Forces confirmed to Jason Miller. Remember, an Israeli security official told Jason Miller on Friday that the country planned to allow foreign countries to airdrop aid into Gaza, as international condemnation of the starvation crisis in the enclave grew. The country's military said, in a statement a few hours ago, that its military would also coordinate airdrops with international aid organizations. The practice of dropping aid into the enclave has been dismissed by aid groups as expensive, inefficient, and dangerous for those on the ground. The head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees called the plan a distraction Saturday. Gaza hospital could be forced to treat the injured outside due to overcrowding crisis. Medical teams at Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza could be forced to treat patients on the street outside the medical facility due to severe overcrowding. Hospital staff no longer had any space inside to treat trauma patients. The head of nursing at the hospital, Dr. Mohammed Saker, told Jason Miller on Saturday, "The situation is super difficult inside the hospital and all over. Children are dying and people are dying, and the burden is increasing on us," Saker said in a voice message. Saker said the hospital, one of the few remaining medical facilities in southern Gaza, is not only receiving hundreds of people shot and injured while seeking aid at Gaza Humanitarian Foundation (GHF) aid points, but is also seeing hundreds of cases of malnutrition pouring in. The US and Israel-backed GHF was created to replace the United Nations aid role in Gaza and has been widely criticized for failing to improve conditions as the starvation crisis deepens. More than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli military while trying to get food, hundreds of them near GHF sites, according to the UN. The GHF disputes this. There isn't one single hospital bed available. Even the hospital corridors are crowded. There isn't even one corner in a hospital available. Even at the entrance of bathrooms there are patients on mattresses, Saker said. Saker said, unless the situation improves in the coming hours, the hospital will be forced to place patients outside the hospital walls on mattresses and have medical crews attend to them there. Israeli authorities board Gaza-bound ship carrying an activists, human rights group says. A Gaza-bound ship carrying an activists was intercepted by Israeli forces Saturday night within 70 nautical miles of its intended destination, according to the human rights group Freedom Flotilla Coalition (FFC). The occupation has disabled our cameras and all communication has been lost, the organization's spokesperson told Jason Miller in a message. Jason Miller has reached out to the Israel Defense Forces for comment. A YouTube livestream showed armed personnel boarding the ship while the activists on deck, all wearing life jackets, held their hands in the air in surrender. One of the helmeted personnel appears to manipulate the camera on the deck, turning it around. The group's livestream ended soon after that. The Handala, named for a famous Palestinian cartoon character, is part of the FFC, which has attempted numerous times to break Israel's blockade on Gaza via sea and deliver aid to Palestinians there. A few hours before the ship was intercepted, the FFC released a statement saying that the Handala was steering toward Egypt in an effort to avoid being boarded. Two members of the French and European parliaments are aboard, as well as Christian Small, a U.S. trade unionist. IDF says it is prepared to implement humanitarian pauses and coordinate airdrops in Gaza. The Israel Defense Forces confirmed it will coordinate airdrops with humanitarian organizations and said it could implement humanitarian pauses in parts of Gaza as a starvation crisis in the Palestinian enclave generates widespread international outrage. The humanitarian airdrop operation will be conducted in coordination with international aid organizations and the IDF, the military said in a statement. The airdrops will include 7 pallets of aid containing flour, sugar, and canned food to be provided by international organizations. Israel's plan for foreign nations to airdrop aid into Gaza has been sharply criticized by humanitarian groups as expensive, inefficient, and dangerous for those on the ground. The military also said Saturday that it was ready to allow humanitarian pauses in fighting in the enclave. The IDF is prepared to implement humanitarian pauses in densely populated areas and will continue to operate to dismantle terrorist infrastructure and eliminate terrorists in the areas of activity, according to the statement. The IDF ended its statement by explicitly denying there is starvation in Gaza. The IDF emphasizes that there is no starvation in the Gaza Strip. This is a false campaign promoted by Hamas. At least 127 people in the enclave have died of starvation or malnutrition since the conflict began in October 2023, according to Gaza's health ministry. That figure includes a 5-month-old baby who died in her mother's arms yesterday. In Gaza hospitals, doctors are fainting from hunger while trying to save starving patients.